The EU has moved to ban imports of Brazilian meat starting from early September due to the country's use of banned antimicrobials to stimulate animal growth.
Favorite Finland and 9 other countries, including Israel, made it through the first Eurovision Song Contest semi-final on Tuesday.
An EU committee made up of experts from member states voted on Tuesday to ban imports of Brazilian meat starting from the 3rd of September due to the country's wide use of antimicrobials to stimulate animal growth. The decision to remove Brazil, famous for exporting steak to the world, from the list of countries that comply with EU food safety standards comes after the EU-Mercosur Free Trade Agreement provisionally entered into force on the 1st of May. The deal between the bloc and the South American Mercosur nations of Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, and Bolivia has been decades in the making, with negotiations first taking place in the year 2000. The deal sparked major opposition from European farmers, who feared that different production standards and regulations will create unfair competition with cheaper Latin American imports. An official with knowledge of the file said that the vote was unanimous, making Brazil the first country removed from the list of states complying with EU restrictions on antimicrobial use in animals. Brazil, however, remains free under the current agreement to export its agricultural produce to Brussels. The list of third countries which comply with EU requirements and therefore can export food-producing animals to the EU will be formally adopted in the coming days.
The European Commission is preparing to use carbon taxes collected from industry to subsidize farmers struggling with rising fertilizer costs, according to a leaked draft document seen by Euronews. European fertilizer production came under pressure following Russia's invasion of Ukraine and ongoing disruption in the Middle East, both of which have driven up costs for farmers and increased inflationary pressure on consumers. Brussels plans to address the problem by recycling revenues from the bloc's carbon market, the emissions trading system, back into agriculture. The plan aims to curb rising prices linked to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which around 30% of the global fertilizer trade passes. The proposal reflects Brussels' recognition of farmers' difficulties as well as the strategic importance of food security. It could, however, also provoke backlash from energy-intensive industries, which are required to pay for the carbon emissions linked to their production. Agriculture has so far been exempt from the emissions trading system and now appears set to benefit from its revenues. In addition, a group of environmental NGOs have urged EU leaders to use the upcoming fertilizer strategy to signal the end of fossil fuel dependency in Europe's food system.
The Hantavirus hit MV Hondia's ship is due to arrive at Rotterdam on Sunday to undergo rigorous disinfection after an outbreak at sea killed at least 3 people and infected 7 other passengers. Hantavirus is a rare rodent-borne disease that occasionally affects humans, leading to illnesses such as respiratory distress, pneumonia, or kidney failure. Over the weekend, the Dutch-flagged ship evacuated all of its passengers on the Atlantic Spanish island of Tenerife before setting off for the Netherlands. Passengers have since been flown back to their home countries, with most having arrived back to the Netherlands, France, Spain, Australia, and New Zealand. In Spain, patients are undergoing several weeks of quarantine at the country's most advanced isolation facility in Madrid. In the Netherlands, patients are also undergoing weeks of isolation at various hospitals across the country. On Wednesday, the operator of the cruise ship said that it expects to know within the week if disinfection processes will be completed in time for its next planned voyages, scheduled for the coming months.
Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur told Euronews program Europe Today that there is no question that accountability needs to be enforced when it comes to the bloc's 90 billion euros loan to Ukraine. The statement came as the former chief of staff to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is investigated for graft allegations.
It is definitely something Ukrainians are looking into very seriously, because it's also important for them that there are no rumors or no problems involved with that kind of assistance, because at the end of the day they need to get the support up and running for next years to come, and then even when the war will be over.
Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov was present at Tuesday's EU Foreign Affairs Council talks, which centered on defense. Pevko said it is up to Fedorov to demonstrate how the funds will be used, not only to allay the anxieties of Ukrainians, but also those of Europeans. Ukraine is also the focus of talks in Romania at a B9 summit on Wednesday, a meeting aimed at exploring how allies on the eastern and Nordic flanks can contribute more to transatlantic security.
The Pentagon said that the cost of the Iran war has risen to $29 billion, an estimate that is roughly $4 billion higher compared to 2 weeks ago. The rise in defense spending goes hand in hand with questions over U.S. President Donald Trump's endgame and the concern over the country's diminishing weapons stockpiles. For the second time in a few weeks, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth faced heavy questions by U.S. lawmakers in Congress. Unlike last time, Hegseth also faced a lot more pushback from within his own Republican Party.
Mr. Secretary, the war in Iran has not only cost 13 American service member lives, it is also costing American taxpayers dearly. Tens of billions of dollars and counting, and that's money that could be helping people perhaps get health care. But instead, we're paying for bombs dropped in a war that American people overwhelmingly oppose.
It seems to me that there's been a different plan almost daily with dealing with this problem.
Hegseth also rejected claims that Washington is running out of weapon stockpiles.
I take issue with the characterization that munitions are depleted in a public forum. That's not true. And ultimately, we have all the munitions needed to execute what we need to execute, and we're going to ensure that we supercharge that going into the future.
Iran and the U.S. remain in a standoff in the Strait of Hormuz, keeping global markets on edge. As a result, Trump has faced declining approval ratings domestically, with many U.S. citizens blaming him for rising gas prices.
A press conference by Real Madrid president Florentino Perez turned into an explosive row after the football supremo criticized the press and made comments described as sexist. Perez also accused arch-rival Barcelona of corruption and claimed that 7 league titles were stolen from Real Madrid.
Y resulta de eso, estamos elaborando un dossier. Y lo estamos elaborando y vamos a llegar hasta el final, porque es el caso más grande de corrupción que se ha habido en la historia del fútbol en el mundo. Y por el bien del fútbol, no por meternos con el Barcelona, pero a nadie, es que eso no se le pasa a nadie en el mundo.
Barcelona, in turn, has said it is considering taking legal action against the Real Madrid president's declarations and accusations. Meanwhile, referring to 2 recent articles published by Spanish news outlet ABC about the club, Perez said one of them was written by a woman. I don't know if she knows anything about football. He later pointed to another journalist and said, "That girl there, ask a question. The rest of you are very ugly." Perez said he would not step down after a disastrous season in which Real Madrid failed to reach the Champions League final and lost the La Liga title to Barcelona. He also announced new club elections and said he would stand as a candidate once again.
Favorite Finland and 9 other countries, including Israel, made it through the first Eurovision Song Contest semi-final on Tuesday. Acts from 15 countries performed their 3-minute songs on stage, often with eye-catching choreography and pyrotechnics, in the bid for votes from juries in participating nations and viewers around the world. Belgium upset the odds to make it through, with Croatia, Greece, Lithuania, Moldova, Poland, Serbia, and Sweden also progressing. Estonia, Georgia, Montenegro, Portugal, and San Marino were eliminated, despite a guest appearance by 1980s icon Boy George on San Marino's song Superstar. This year marks the 70th edition of Eurovision, which, despite its spectacle, rarely escapes the politics in the background. Divisions are clouding this year's contest more than ever, with 5 countries, Spain, Ireland, the Netherlands, Slovenia and Iceland, boycotting to protest Israel's inclusion over the conduct of its war in Gaza. There were also allegations it ran a rule-breaking marketing campaign to get votes for its contestant last year. The 5-country boycott is a revenue and viewership blow to an event that organizers say was watched by 166 million people around the world last year.
It's a sight that has sent shivers down the spines of visitors for centuries. At the Banz Monastery Church in southern Germany, 4 complete skeletons sit draped in silk, brocade and precious stones. Known as the catacomb saints, these remains, Vincentius, Valerius, Benedictus and Felis Benedictus, were brought from Rome during the late 17th and 18th centuries to enhance the status of the Bavarian monastery. Church custodians admit the sight can be creepy, with hollow eye sockets that seem to stare back at the living.
Das war am Ende des 30-jährigen Krieges. Das war ja eine schreckliche Zeit. Da ist ja 3/4 der deutschen Bevölkerung einfach umgekommen. Durch Kriege, Seuchen etc. Es war schrecklich, auch hier. Und da hat man versucht, durch den Barock das Tor zum Himmel zu öffnen. Deswegen wurde das alles so schön gestaltet. Man wollte einfach, das war eine Flucht. Ja, aus der Gegenwart, die oft so schlimm war. Und deswegen hat man auch diese gruseligen Skelette einfach schön drapiert und möglichst lebendig dargestellt.
These holy bodies are kept out of sight for most of the year, hidden behind wooden panels. They are only revealed on special occasions such as All Saints' Day, serving as a gilded reminder of a time when relics were the ultimate symbol of spiritual power.